we chew the fat and give our gut reactions on all things pop culture, film, TV and theatre. We talk to legends in the creative industry and those on the rise. We game old school. We support independent creatives. Got a project? Tell us about it. Get in touch. We do all of this, and a whole lot more. Like, subscribe, get involved. Join Steen Anthony Nielsen and the Outcasts Creative.
Hello. Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday evening. The Nielsen Ratings is normally on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. and we should have been doing this program yesterday. And I gave very strict instructions to my regular panel to make sure that they had seen a particular show which was going to dominate our discussions for the Nielsen ratings this week. That show is Suspect, the shooting of Jean-Charles de Menezes, which is currently available on Disney+. They also produced the show. We don't often get to say great things about Disney content among YouTubers. It's not a big thing, but as you know, our channel focuses on recommending you stuff that we think you should see. I have no interest in doing hour-long shows talking about stuff that we don't like. It's a waste of my time and yours. Plenty of other people will be giving you that kind of content. We're here to talk about stuff that we want to recommend. And in particular, I was very interested to have a mixed panel of both British and American guests on this evening, so that we could get a real mixed view, mixed perspectives of what people think of this particular drama. Now, if you look on the IMDb for this thing, you'll see that there's 11 reviews, and actually I tried to be the first person to post a review for this show. I watched it the morning it dropped. Actually, I had it on, and IMDb would not post my review, which I found infuriating, and I wondered if that was because in my review I was very critical of the British police and how they handled this particular incident, which of course we're going to talk about in more detail shortly. So I had to submit my review 3 times. Ultimately now 2 of my reviews, slightly differently worded, are now both on IMDb, which is kind of ironic. So yeah, anyway, they are both there, and both of them rate this show quite highly. So before we get into it, I'm going to bring in my panel. I've got an eclectic panel here, and a couple of people who are relatively new to the channel, but not new to these kinds of discussions. So let me start bringing people in. First of all, I've got one of my guests who actually came on for an interview, was a regular subscriber of my channel. I saw that they were an artist, and of course what we do on this channel, in fact it's a main focus of this channel, is we support other artists. We get them on for interviews. We talk to people right across the board, from people at the very top like film producer Gail Ann Hurd, to people writing their first or second novels, maybe designing a board game on Kickstarter, things of that nature. Yeah, so you guessed it, Rachel Percy-Art is here and joining a discussion panel for the very first time on the Outcast Creative. And I really wanted there to be a woman on the panel this evening, so thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm excited
Excellent.
for this.
I can tell. I can hear the nerves in your voice. Secondly, I have one of my regular co-hosts, the person who had actually watched the program yesterday. The Inside Man is also here.
Good evening. Yeah, it's great to join you, to be honest with you, especially because it's such a significant production, I think, that we're talking about this evening.
There's going to be lots to say about it, and we're really just going to be talking about this today. whereas on the Nielsen ratings we normally pick a show each.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to spend significant time talking about this particular show and the story and also not only that, but discuss how it holds up against the reality, how accurate is it, and so on. And we'll get into all of those topics as we go. We also have representing the north of the country, Northern English Bastard is here.
Hello, you beautiful people. How are you all doing?
Very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
Nice.
Yeah, just had to rush a little bit because it was 9 o'clock we were starting, and I got it in my head it was still 10. So
I thought so, which is why I rapidly rung everyone. I did say it's going to be 9. I did tell everybody that.
I'm a creature of habit. I do apologise. I'm a creature of habit.
That's all right. We also have representing the world of law enforcement, a former police officer, former special forces soldier, etc. I've got the Lord of Toxicity here, so it's great to also have you coming from that kind of background on this panel.
My pleasure, Lance, always.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, the biggest fan of the new series of Shogun on the planet, Darth Plato, is here.
Ooh.
Hello.
Hey man, how you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah. So we've got a big panel. We've got is it a magnificent 7? 3, 6. 6 of us. Yeah. Okay. I had to mute Darth because his air conditioning unit was on again. Okay. All right. So just a couple of.
Would you mind if I just quickly preface the stream, if that's okay, mate? There's something I think really needs to be said, and anybody who knows Lance and his work will know that
Sure, go ahead.
There's very much a theme to the majority of Lance's work, particularly his stage work, and that is social justice. Would that be a fair assumption for me to state that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm not first and foremost a YouTuber. My YouTube thing came about completely by accident, really as a result of lockdown. My main profession is that I'm a writer, director, and a playwright. My play about the post office scandal is going on for the 5th time next month. And my first play was about the Hillsborough football disaster. I've also done plays about the Marchioness. I've done a huge play about the conflict in Northern Ireland, which the beginning of which covered Bloody Sunday. I also did the Victoria Climbié inquiry, which was the child abuse scandal in Haringey. I've done plays about HIV and a whole host of other topics. I have done comedies and musicals, but no one ever comes to watch those. So, so yeah, it's fair to say I've done I've done 3 feature films, all of which have a common thread, which is dealing with loss and bereavement. So, yeah, it's true to say that I mean, this is the sort of production that I would have, I don't want to use the word loved because that's the wrong. I would have definitely embraced tackling this if someone had asked me to do so, in the same way that I tackled the post office scandal. This is very much the kind of drama that I would like to be making, because I think it's very important not only to address the issues that it raises, and doing that through drama, as we know from how the post office scandal drama was received, the one that dropped on New Year's Day. I'm not talking about my play. That had a massive impact, and people do watch television, and it's a very good way of distilling, if done properly, it's a very good way of distilling facts and the emotional thread of a story, which we're going to get into. So yes, that's a fair assumption, Inside Man. Did you want to elaborate any further?
No, it's. I think it's. I think it must be. It must be noted that social justice is very, very prominent in your work, and I was really just going to say exactly what you had said, which was this is the kind of thing that you would have really, got your teeth into. This, and I think you used the correct word there, embrace. Yeah, I can tell that this, from the moment you suggested for us to watch this, I immediately thought, a kind of a light went on. I thought, I know exactly why he wants us to talk about this, because it is important. It's very much an important subject. Yeah.
Well, let's get into the background. So the events of this 4-part drama, which is, as I said, it's a Disney production. We're in the year 2005, which, when you say that out loud, 18 longer actually, sorry, 20 years ago. I mean, I find it hard to believe that's 20 years ago, because we had London had its equivalent of 9/11. Not quite the same level of devastation, but we had we had a bomber cell, some of whom had been trained in terror camps in Pakistan and things like this, and they took 4 improvised explosive devices, primarily made from concentrated hydrogen peroxide, packed them into backpacks, and set them off on 4 different tube lines in 4 different carriages, and 52 people from 18 different nationalities were killed. Nearly 800 were injured. It was the biggest terrorist incident on UK soil since the 1988 Pan Am bombing of Flight 103 Lockerbie, which is there's another TV show coming out about that, and I think we probably will talk about that in detail when it drops. It's also in terms of London, it's the biggest attack on London since World War II, which is one of the lines in the show. What subsequently followed after that was that there was a second cell that also then attempted to carry out attacks, and this second cell unfortunately mixed the explosive devices incorrectly. The devices went off, but they didn't result in any loss of life, and the 4 terrorists were forced to flee the tubes that they were on. Some of them pursued by British civilians. In fact, I'm amazed that all 4 of them were able to escape. I think so, that passive nature of the public to just kind of stand by. If I'd been there, I know exactly how I would have reacted. And a physical altercation definitely would have taken place. But yeah, so you had these other 4, this cell, all 4 of them escaped. So now London is on this massive state of high alert, and not all of our policemen carry guns. We have special police units. I think they're called SO19, if I remember rightly, who are stationed where things of this nature are deemed to be happening. There's various mobile units that will move around, and by this time they were trying to track down these 4 guys, and they had an address where one of them was believed to be staying under surveillance. There were several flats at that address. It hadn't even been identified by the police that building was not a single dwelling. Now, how they made that mistake is completely beyond me, because I've seen the building. It's very obviously flats, very obviously. Don't have to be a scientist to work that out. So they thought that anyone coming out of that property lived at the same address as the terrorist, which is mistake number 1. Jean-Charles, who looks absolutely nothing like the suspect, absolutely nothing like him in any way whatsoever, not even racially the same, was leaving the address from his flat on his way to work. The surveillance officer outside, unfortunately, was taking a leak when he left the flat, so didn't get a good look at him. And there was a series of confused communications that followed. the armed unit was supposed to be in place already at the address, but they were running late. And because of that, they were directed to go straight to the station. There was confused communication, which came not least of all from Cressida Dick, who was supposed to be overseeing the operation. She turned up late as well because she went to the wrong room, so she said. And she gave specific instructions that the man was not to get on that train. Now, unfortunately, that was perceived by the firearms team as in, Kratos operation had been greenlit, which basically meant use of lethal force. The man's a bomber. He mustn't get on the train. He hadn't been properly identified as a bomber. He certainly didn't look like he was carrying anything. He didn't have any baggy clothing or anything like that. And unfortunately, due to this miscommunication, this team steamed on board the train that he just boarded, and they fired I think it was about 17 rounds into his head, something like that. There were 17 witnesses on board the train. Every single one of them stated unequivocally that the police, first of all, did not identify themselves when they came on board the train, which they later said that they did. And they basically just shot him and he was already restrained by the surveillance officer. So one has to ask, could he have even detonated a bomb even if he did have one, which he did not, because he was not a bomber. So then there followed a dirty tricks campaign, no doubt activated by certain sections within the apparatus, where they tried to discredit this guy. First of all, they realized he wasn't a terrorist. Then they tried to smirch his name by saying that he was a rapist, and actually got a woman to even come forward and identify him as sexually assaulting her several months previous. Absolutely unbelievable. That was all ruled out, of course, but these things get ruled out weeks later by DNA tests or whatever. That's after the Sun have run their front page story. He was a rapist or whatever. So this case is not only a prime example of miscommunication and how the worst things can happen when miscommunication happens. It's also an example of the kind of shit that then follows that in terms of manipulating the media, and how you have to be really careful about reacting to headlines that you see on, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or wherever you see headlines, and you see a headline, it grabs you, makes you angry, makes you react a certain way. You have to question every headline you see. You have to check every link that you read. Is it legit? Where's it come from? Where are the sources? What does it really mean? You have to question all news now, and I think this story really highlights that, because I remember when it was like, oh, they got one of them, and people were like in shops were like going, yes, good, they killed one of them, they killed one of these guys that got away. People were cheering. Everybody thought, a terrorist had been killed. London was tense. And I'm not saying mistakes don't get made. They do get made. It's how you handle them. Anyway, so that brings us to Suspect, the shooting of Jean-Charles Menezes, named after the event of the same topic. 4-part drama series now on Disney. It's got a fantastic cast. It's about 50 minutes per episode. And it retells these events. The first episode very much focuses on the life of the victim. The second episode is the shooting. The third episode is very much the cover-up, and the fourth episode is really focuses on the public inquiry and the campaign for justice by the family. Jean-Charles was a Brazilian national, and there are, as far as I can tell, there are no inaccurate facts, big facts, and there might be some little things to do with timings of scenes with relatives and stuff like that. But in terms of big facts that are very much about the case and the mistakes that were made, those kinds of things, I'm pretty familiar with this case, because there was also a play made about this case, which was called Stockwell, which is named after the tube. And there was a recreation of the public inquiry as well as a dramatization on stage. I've also seen that. So I am fairly up to speed with this case. So I pushed my panel to watch it, and great that we've got 10 people tuning in as well. If you have seen Suspect, let us know what you think about it in the chat. If you have any questions for my panelists, also please put them in the chat. So what I want to hear first from each person, because I'm going to have to carefully moderate this because we've got a big panel, so I can't have everybody talking at once. And I want to focus on sort of one topic at a time. What I'd like to ask each panelist first is your initial gut reaction from watching the show, what the initial sort of thoughts as a viewer were, and just prefix that with how much did you know about these events before you watched this drama. And if we can just focus on those two things for now. So Rachel, ladies first. We'll go to you first, please.
Watching it was quite an experience. By the end of it, I don't think I've ever been this angry about police procedures. I mean, I know there are mistakes. We see them every day, but I've never seen something that brutal that was then tried to cover up and blamed on the victim. And by the end of it, I was so angry that I had to get away from it. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I watched it. And I do remember when it happened. I was 18 when it happened. So I remember the bombings being on the news, but I never heard about this. And that's the sad part. You don't hear about this.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Rachel. That's nice and concise, which is what we like. Known as a non-Lance-like speech. Inside Man. Obviously, you're a Londoner, so you're coming at this slightly differently.
Yeah, I mean, like you, Lance. I mean, I remember this vividly, and I'll be completely honest with you. When we first discovered that somebody had been taken out, the polite way of putting it, taken out by the police, we all acted on the assumption, as you quite rightly said, that this was one of the potential bombers. And there was quite a bit of rejoicing, and there was an awful lot of glee at the demise of somebody who was going to take the lives, further lives of Londoners. And it was stoked somewhat by the gutter press, which is plentiful in this country. Saddens me to say, but it was when we finally when we started to see cracks appearing in the story. I thought, oh my God, my immediate thought was feeling quite guilty at being so overwhelmingly joyous at the demise of one of these, potential bombers, and I thought, oh my God, this is not quite how it's being painted. And as time went on, we had more and more information that was coming out. Should I say misinformation? I think the phrase now it's a much overused phrase, but I think it really does fit very, very appropriately. The amount of fake news that was being peddled, particularly in British newspapers, and they lapped it up. They absolutely lapped it up. Their headlines were today's equivalent of, I suppose, clickbait. So everybody was grabbing these newspapers with these sordid headlines, thinking that we have some kind of success in, after such a tragedy of 7/7. And having watched this, I think Rachel has actually summed it up really quite perfectly. I think anger is one of the things. It's the anger actually overwhelmed me quite a bit, and even thinking about it now, the same way as Rachel had said, I'm finding it difficult to get rid of this out of my head, and I'm glad that I'm finding it difficult to shrug this from my mind.
Well,
because we
I'm
shouldn't
going to guess the filmmakers are probably pleased to hear that, because that's probably what they want. I think
it's such an incredible piece of television, You know, I mean, this goes beyond just a television show. It really does. But yeah, it's difficult for me to sort of add anything to what Rachel has actually said. So so thank her for saying what she did. It's such a, I mean, it's a very emotive subject, and yeah, even now I can feel myself just talking about it. I can feel myself seething somewhat.
Hmm.
You know, I can really genuinely feel, you know, my heart thudding, and you know, the veins in my temple starting to throb, because I still feel extraordinarily angry about this. Um, that, you know, I think there was a line in JFK, one of your favorite movies, Lance, and the line is, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, if, you know, the line is, if they can do it to a president, then just think of what they can do to us. If they can do this, if the police are able to do this, you know, they could do exactly the same to us, should they desire it. Um, and I think it's really important to remember that they aren't perfect, you know, and when you see cover-ups like this, um, it makes you realize that some of these, I hate using this, some of these conspiracy theorists might in some way, shape or form be correct in some of the assumptions that they come out with. So, and that's, I think that's the best I can do without getting really angry. So, yeah, sorry
No,
about that.
that's right. I'm just looking for those initial thoughts. That's great. Next in the queue, Northern.
Yeah, this is really, this is actually well made. And when I saw Disney was going to do like this series, I thought, are they going to twist this around because we know Disney? But no, I didn't. I did not see any agenda here at all. All I saw was, well, the Met run by incompetence or out to save their own asses. What else is new? That is bang on that. And yet this guy really did not deserve what happened. If the police officers who pretty much who shot the poor guy had said, listen, we're in a heated situation, we had to act fast, we had no time to think, they probably would have, my opinion would have been lesser of them. But no, it's the way they went about it after. The total dishonesty, the lies, Christina Dixon throwing them under the bus when she was kind of responsible for it herself. And
we'll get on to that. That's going to be a heading. We'll get on to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like I'm glad that they didn't try to make us feel sorry for the actual terrorists. No, they portrayed them as a bunch of dumb lads who have been radicalized. And
no, I thought, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about balance as well, but yeah, I did think the show was quite well balanced.
It is.
I'll tell you some things later that I feel underlined that.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel glamorized or anything. It does actually feel very realistic and very honest as well. And I do praise the bloody writers. I was really like I said, I was really skeptical if Disney's gonna like force some agenda, but no, the cast really do well. It's portrayed honestly and it's neutrally as well, and a lot more considerately as well. It really is.
Great. Okay. Well, we're going to talk about the cast first. Okay, from the law enforcement community, Lord Toxic, American law enforcement.
Yeah, this is just really disgraceful, horrible tactics. These guys were they were over communicated and undertrained. Like they gave them too much briefing. It just, as I saw it building up to this, and I'm ashamed to say that I didn't know about these bombings and I didn't know about this incident prior to you putting me onto this. So, you know, in that way, I had to kind of educate myself on this. And I was in Cuba at the time that this happened, so we kind of had a media blackout then. We didn't really get to hear about a lot of stuff.
Right.
So that being said, this was really shocking. A lot of this, I think it was designed that way, you know, because it's one of those things that, you know, it lulls you into like a standard police procedural, and then it turns into this brutal, you know, Fruitvale Station type tragedy. So yeah.
Yeah, that's another very good movie, Fruitville Station. My God, I mean, I could only watch it the once, but yeah, it was another very good film. And last but by no means least, hanging out at the bottom there with his camera on, Darth Plato. You're muted, Darth, so you got to unmute yourself. There you go. Oh, hang on, I might need to unmute you. Sorry, due to your air conditioning unit. There we go. There you go.
Okay. I do remember the 7/7 event. It did make the news here in the U.S. I remember thinking, oh, this was in the same vein as 9/11. So these are neo-barbarians. They're anti-civilization. It's the second coming of the Visigoths and the Vandals. And believe me, I was looking at it and just saying, go get these guys. You do what you need to do. Now, what happened after that, I wasn't really familiar with, like the copycat bombings or the cell, whoever they were, and the shooting of this innocent guy. I honestly don't remember that. So watching this is a real revelation about what happened with that whole event involving 7/7. Now, my gut reaction watching this is you immediately have to feel for the suspect, obviously, because he wasn't just shot by mistake. He was executed by mistake.
Yeah.
And well, obviously, I feel silly almost saying that this is a bad thing. Of course, it's bad. I'm stating the obvious, so please excuse me. But and what happened with the family, obviously, you can't help but feel for them. And the program really nails that down. And I'm glad they did, and they should. This is something that should never be forgotten. Everybody should be aware of the story. And Inside Man has the best line to date on this program about this. If they can do this, if the authorities can get away with this for this one guy, they can get away with it for anybody. And that's exactly 100% correct. I was going to say that, but kudos, you got the line first.
However, you got to get in quick with the Inside Man. That's
my one misgiving about it, however, is I don't really think that they really tap into the tactical officers and they're going into the situation. It's almost like they're all being lumped in almost like the one guy named Brian, he's like my favorite character because he's the one guy that seems to have half a brain. But the tactical team, think about it, they're only doing what they're told. The surveillance people are the ones.
We'll get into that.
That's my gut reaction. That's my gut reaction. Wait a minute, these guys seem to be kind of getting railroaded here. Okay, that's my gut reaction.
Right. Okay. What we're going to do now is we're going to break this into sections. We're going to focus on purely on the production first. I just want to talk about the different aspects of it. And some people may feel they can offer less of an opinion than others on these things, but I do want you to offer your opinion, even if it's short and concise. So I'm going to talk about the cast first. Now, you've got a mixture of cast in this show from relative unknowns. Edison Al-Qaedi, I believe is how you pronounce the surname. And for the benefit of the panel, he's watching right now. You have Laura Aikman, who plays the Canadian who's involved in the investigation, which follows Max Beasley, who I've met a couple of times as Andy Heyman. Russell Tovey playing Brian Paddock, who was a very well-known police officer at the time. I think he was the assistant commissioner, but he had a very high profile. Quite a high public profile, been involved in a number of high profile investigations, was often doing media briefings and things of that nature. And I thought Russell Tovey really nailed him. He really got him. And then Conoleth Hill. Now, for those people that didn't recognize him, this is the Master of Whispers from Game of Thrones with hair. And Sir Ian Blair was a commissioner who presided over the Met for quite some considerable time. I think well over a decade. Inside Man, possibly longer.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was seeing him do the briefings, I was thinking, oh, God, this man is not handling this well. And then you have Emily Mortimer, who, as I wrote in my review, was appropriately emotionally removed as Cressida Dick. Now, Cressida Dick, despite her involvement in this operation, and despite refusing to take any responsibility for anything that went wrong, and despite refusing to acknowledge that the police even made any mistakes, would later go on to succeed Ian Blair and have his job. So, yeah. And by the way, Connolith Hill does have hair in real life. That may well, I don't know if that is a wig, but he does have hair in real life. He had to shave it off for Game of Thrones, and he hated shaving it off for Game of Thrones. Daniel Mays, very well-known character actor in the UK, plays the bomb disposal guy. It's quite a small role, but it's an important role. And then we're going to talk about the rest of the cast as well. So you've got a really interesting range of actors. There's a core of very experienced supporting character actors in this show. And then you have a whole load of people who are very, very new. I've mentioned a few of them already. Here's the complete cast list. I want to shout out Jamie B. Chambers, who I've worked with. He did a read-through of one of my productions one time. Very talented actor. He's got a small role in this as one of the police surveillance officers, I believe. And then we have the actors who played the terrorists. I thought they were great. They're very, very, very natural. You know, I think also one of the stories that was put out, and I believe this formed the basis for their defense, is that when they were doing their copycat campaign, they weren't actually intending to hurt anyone. They just wanted to scare people. That is absolute bullshit. Absolute bullshit. They fully intended to do a copycat and kill as many people as possible. Unfortunately, they were just incompetent, thank God, and couldn't make the bombs properly. So that story was not believed. Now, not everybody's on this cast list. There are people missing. So IMDb has been a bit slow. One of the other actors who's in this film is the same actor who was in This City Is Ours, which we discussed on Nielsen Ratings a couple of weeks ago, and he's appearing in everything at the moment. And I think there is actually a still of him. If we go to the stills, this guy was very good as well. These are the two armed police officers. The one on the left is the actor from Liverpool, who is also in This City Is Ours, and he's been in quite a few things. First thing I saw him in was Little Boy Blue, which is a really good true story drama. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth watching. So the actor on the left is James Nelson Joyce. And I predict that within 10 years, he will win a BAFTA, if not sooner. Because he's such a powerful presence. When he's in a scene, you can't take your eyes off him. And he's absolutely terrifying. Really fantastic first-class actor. So he's got quite a small role in this. And he's not yet on the IMDb list. Jay Simpson is another one who plays his boss. He plays the armed security boss. And again, I don't think his name is yet on this list. This list is very incomplete. There's a lot of actors missing from here. So I can't actually shout out all the people I would like to shout out because the list is not complete. IMDb, what's wrong with you? You know, the show's been out for a week. So if this is Jay Simpson. Let's put that up now. And yeah, he's an actor that I know very well, and I've seen him on stage as well. So he was also in the show. He's very good. He's criminally underused, in my opinion. So you've got a first class cast, but I think you know, if there's a standout actor in this piece, it's got to be the lad that plays John Charles, because first of all, that's a really difficult part to play. You've got to play him as you've got to get the audience on side. You've got to play him as he's just a guy over here. He's a tourist. He's visiting London. He's trying to get a bit of work, and then he plans to go home for Christmas. You've just got to play him as an ordinary bloke. You can't overplay him. You really need a naturally gifted actor to pull off this role, and he's also got to be quite charismatic. So not only did they manage to cast an actor who really looks quite like him, but yeah, I think he was great. So of the new kids on the block in this show, of which there's about 15, I've got to give it to him. And then of the older actors, I think Russell Tovey and Connolith Hill as the two sparring police officers, as well as Emily Mortimer as Cressida Dick. I mean, the three of them as the three key police officers really do a great job. There's no weak links in this for me on the actors. There wasn't a scene where I went, oh, that's not so great. So sticking purely with the cast, if you want to shout out a particular cast member who did it for you, please do so. If there was anybody you thought that was weak, don't hold back. I'm just going to go to each panelist. Just anything you want to say about the cast. You can keep this quite short. Rachel?
I can't think of anyone that didn't do an amazing job, and that's rare, especially for a Disney production.
Yeah.
They did a great job casting this, and I was truly surprised.
Well, there were no Disney kids in this show.
Thank God, right? But every single person did an excellent job. And like you said, the actor that played John Charles, you felt for him immediately. Like he was just a regular person doing what every one of us has done. And he really showed that. And the one moment that really got me was his ability to show confusion and fear at the same time.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Yeah. I know exactly what moment you're talking about. Thank you, Inside Man.
I'm fear of repeating myself. I have to agree with Rachel. It's a phenomenal piece of casting. Every single one of these wonderful actors has really given us an extraordinary experience watching this, and it is an experiential show.
Very much so.
More than more than just a standard piece of television. This is something that has been done so perfectly and acted so perfectly and cast so perfectly. It is very, very difficult for me to say who I would say is the most outstanding. But I have to agree with Rachel here that to show that kind of fear and confusion at that moment, and I'm feeling myself getting quite emotional just talking about it. At that moment, it's hard to describe this show to anybody that hasn't seen it. So I would encourage anybody that hasn't seen it, you must watch this. This is an absolute must. I mean, just beautiful casting, beautiful acting, because every one of those actors gave me something from this. They either made me incredibly cross, incredibly angry, and I don't think I've watched anything quite like this that has really had the blood pumping around my body so fast.
Sure.
Not in a long time. It's amazing casting, and for all of the criticism that people have had for Disney over the years and everything, this is a massive gold star in their column right now. It really is.
Well, I want to give the casting directors a shout out here before I hear from the rest of the panel. One of them is Des Hamilton, no less than 137 casting credits on IMDb. Extremely experienced, done a huge number of shows, so it's not surprising that he has an eye for talent. So we have Des Hamilton, we have Leah Harrison, the second casting director on it, and perhaps less experienced. It's quite nice as well when you get an experienced casting director and they bring on a second, because this is the way people get pulled up in the industry, as my casting director Sharon Sorrentino will tell you. And she's worked on things like Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, Fallen, and this show, as well as Better Man and so on. So she's worked as an assistant and as an associate. So good on you, Leah, for now being a co-casting director on a show of such superb quality. What a great notch to have in your CV. You think the two of you did an absolutely fantastic first class job on this. Northern, do you want to say anything about the cast?
Oh, it's real hard to say as well, because they all do a really good job. I mean, they actually do play these parts very convincingly. But I will say, I'll give a shout out to the kids who play the wannabe terrorists as well, because the fact that they were
great,
that's so young and they're willing to kill innocent people is really disturbing, and they play it so well. And I do like Emily Mortimer. You really want to punch her when she's up in that court stand. The fact that she's so overconfident, so arrogant and smug, and completely completely apathetic to what that poor family has gone through. And I love Russell Tovey as well, but I will give credit to Conliffe Hill as well, because Jesus Christ, the arrogance on this guy. He is every single superior officer who does not care about what happens as long as it makes him look good. It's not about serving the public, he's serving himself. Yeah. And I do like Daniel Mays, and I'll give a shout out to Daniel Mays, because he's one of the few characters who's working with the police who actually comes across as an actual likable guy who knows what he's doing. And he's trying to do his best as he can.
Yeah, they handle the kind of internal conflicts between departments quite
it's kind
well.
Of like that. Yeah, it's kind of like that drama you recommended me about the cruise boat. I forgot what it was called, where everyone's just pointing fingers and throwing everyone under the bus and blaming them for the disaster. It's kind of reminded me of that.
That was the Estonia thing that we watched.
Estonia, that's it. Yes.
I'm still amazed that that's not had a mainstream Western release yet, because it's such a good show. And I think we're the only people on it.
Yeah, I keep meaning to review it, but I've only just remembered it right now, so I'll try and get it on that as soon as I can.
I think we're the only people that have reviewed it on social media. Toxic, you got anything you want to say about the cast real quick?
Just I was surprised at the people who I recognized from other projects like Game of Thrones, and Mortimer. And then the people who I didn't know, which unfortunately was quite a lot. I was just really, really impressed, especially the ones that played your police officers were very good, very believable.
All right. Well, we're gonna move on from the casting, and we're gonna talk about the standard of the production and also accuracy. Darth has come back. So, Darth, did you want to chip in anything quickly about the cast before I move on?
Everybody seemed really appropriate to me. Ian Blair was probably the best actor that's on there. I like Brian a lot. I thought he was really convincing. He's my favorite character, as I said. No one struck me as... Right, that's all I got.
Okay, all right. Well, so before we get into the production and also the accuracy, let's just remind ourselves of the show.
July the 7th.
This is a major incident.
They've never seen anything like it before.
This is the most significant attack on the capital since the Second World War.
I suppose we should assume
that the people that did this will try again.
In the next few minutes, we could have other terrorists attacking the city. This needs decisive action.
Train is about to depart.
He's entered the station. Should he be stopped?
What's happening?
He's here!
There's now no doubt. The man shot yesterday has no connections to terrorism.
We can't let this define us.
I can't stop thinking that all of the stuff they said about Jean-Charles isn't true.
The pain of the loss of our cousin at the hands of the police was unbearable.
You are really not prepared to say that any mistake was made here, are you?
We both know the penalty.
Stop that!
For not telling the truth.
And for anybody confused, the penalty for not telling the truth is you get to stay in the police force, you get promoted, and then you become commissioner. So, yeah, let's get into the, the standard of the drama itself. You have a number of complex and emotional scenes. You're juggling quite a lot of storylines. You're juggling quite a lot of characters. It's a big ensemble cast. We've already talked about the cast and how that's all first class. We have the sequences, the bombing itself. We have the sequence of the execution of Jean-Charles. Let's start with that because, and I know this as myself as a filmmaker and a playwright that has tackled a number of very difficult and contentious and serious issues that have to be handled sensitively, and with care, because you're talking about real lives that you're depicting. How did we feel that the scene was handled with the execution of Jean-Charles? So I'll go to Rachel first.
What struck me about it is I knew what was going to happen. You knew the inevitable conclusion. But watching it from my perspective, when we think of police violence, you expect it kind of at a distance. And the way they showed it, it felt like someone kicked me in the chest when it happened. They shot it so well. It was so fast that it felt like you were watching it actually happen. And that was probably the moment in the series that I was like, am I sure that I can finish this? Because I was so angry just in that moment.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, also for the benefit of those people who are not from the UK, they filmed this in the actual station where this happened with the right, with a real train and everything. So it would have been a night shoot after the station was shut during the week. And I believe they went in and shot all the stuff they needed to shoot over a couple of days. That was a pretty quick turnaround. But yeah, okay, great. Inside Man?
Well, in the wrong hands, this could have been considered exploitative.
Absolutely.
But fortunately, we obviously have some very, very talented filmmakers, directors, producers, writers. I think it was given the precise treatment that it deserved. It did feel exactly as Rachel had said, that we were actually experiencing this. We were an eyewitness to this, and I think that was really important, because we have to be, when telling a true story and something as barbaric as this execution, I think we have to bear witness to it. We absolutely must. There's no point in any producer or director saying, well, we wanted to treat it with sensitivity, so we didn't feel the need, because everybody knows what happened. We didn't feel the need to actually show it, but it had to be shown. We had to know the result of the incompetence. I thought it was brilliantly done, really, truly brilliantly done. And these filmmakers, genuinely, I think there is a massive future all laid out ahead of them. I really do feel that.
I think it was written and directed by I want to say Jeff Pope, if I remember.
Oh, it was Jeff Pope. You're absolutely correct. It was Jeff Pope. Yeah.
And I mean, he is a man with. Sorry, it's written by Jeff Pope. It was directed by Paul Andrew Williams. And Paul Andrew Williams is he kickstarted his directing career. I don't know if you remember, with that independent film London to Brighton.
Yes.
And he's worked with Jeff Pope before on A Confession. He's also directed 5 episodes of Broadchurch. He's done various shorts and sort of one-off television dramas. He also did The Cottage. That was his second feature film. And then he did The Walk-In with Stephen Graham and the miniseries Archie in 2023, which starred Jason Isaacs. That's a great show, actually. I really do like that show. So yeah, he's a director of some experience. Jeff Pope is a bit of a British pillar of a writer. He's done a huge number of dramas of this nature. He also did the Stan and Ollie film. He did Four Lives, which I think is a show that Northern is a bit of a fan of. That's it. I mean, that's another travesty. We could get into that one. He did The Hatton Garden. He did Little Boy Blue as well, which features a number of the same cast, and he did The Moorside. These are all great British television dramas. So do you know what? I should have put my Best of British thing on this, which I'll do in a bit. So Northern, you got anything to say about the depiction of that particular sequence?
Yeah, it is very intense as well, because you know what's going to happen, but it's just honestly, years ago when I heard about this happening, I mean, I wasn't really full on with the details, especially with the news at the time, and I actually thought it was some guy who was trying to run from the police and got shot in the head. But no, now that I see that they actually jumped him on the train and then just emptied full bloody clips into his face. It's like, Jesus Christ. I know sometimes you got to maybe do a few times to make sure they're properly dead, but do you really have to do it that many times? It's like Jesus Christ. It's
it was overkill like, in anyone's.
I know sometimes you got to make decisions and do things without thinking, because hesitating can cost lives. But that was just so crazy as well, and it just goes to show just how really badly run the Met was, and still is to this day.
And still is.
Yeah. Jesus Christ, yeah. Get arrested for posting memes now.
Yeah, well, let's not do any after this discussion, eh? I mean, you can see from this footage, that's the real footage on screen now, and thank you for Lord Toxic, I'm sure, is the person who supplied this. That's the real footage of Jean-Charles just before he goes through the ticket barrier. We can see he's not wearing any baggy clothing. He has a very light jacket on. He doesn't have a padded jacket. All of that was like bullshit that was put out by the Dirty Tricks department. And we can see how closely he resembles the suspect here. As you can see, the skin tone is very similar. The huge Dumbo ears are very similar. By that, I mean there's no similarity to them whatsoever.
Lance, the Met are diverse. They don't see colour. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's not even a remote You know, even on a dark night in an alley, there's no way you would mistake person on the left for person on the right. Just wouldn't happen. So,
like, were they blind?
I mean, the problem was that the guys who were steaming down there with the guns were basically told there was a target. He wasn't to be allowed on the train. There was very confused communication. You can't put it all at their door, but you know, they have to. I get it. You know, London was on this very high state of alert. There were 4 bombers out there. This could have been one of them, but that doesn't excuse what happened. It just doesn't. And you know, this guy had not been properly identified, even as the suspect. In fact, one policeman said it wasn't him. So you know, I could go on, but yeah, Toxic. Do you want to talk about the depiction of that sequence?
I mean, it's as it was progressing. See, I went into this blind because I didn't know about these events, but as it was ramping up and these guys were getting bombarded by boring briefings and then, you know, handed, you know, special ammo and, you know, basically, you know, kill on sight orders, so to speak. I was like, these guys they're going to have buck fever. Buck fever is a hunting term where you start to see deers that are not there. It's the reason why so many hunting accidents happen in the United States every year, because people will shoot their friends and they'll swear to God and they would not be lying that they saw a deer when in fact it was a guy in a big bright orange vest, because they wanted it so badly. They wanted to see it. They wanted to pull that trigger. And that's what I see. So you say you're being very generous saying that you don't lay it all at their doorstep. I completely fundamentally disagree. When you hold the weapon, it is all on your doorstep. I've never shot anybody that I was not supposed to. So it was so clumsily handled, and they dumped 7 rounds into that kid's head. That's crazy. I mean, it's so overkill.
It was 7 each, I think.
I thought it was 7 total, but you might be right.
Yeah, I'd have to double check that. In fact, I will double check it because I don't want to get any facts on this stream wrong.
Did one cop reload his gun and then shoot him in the head a few more times? Or
he suffered a jam or a hang fire where because he depressed the trigger too quickly and the Glock jammed on him, because hollow points will do that usually in semi-automatic weapons.
Yeah, it's a nice detail that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for that, Darth. Anything to sort of add about that sequence, how it's portrayed, how it's handled in the show?
Well, I knew that it was gonna go bad when they were identifying this guy as the suspect. Now you have 3 different groups of cops here. You have the people at the station, the command center. You have the surveilling cops, and then you have the strike team or the tactical team, whatever you want to call it, that's moving in to do the hit.
Yeah.
Now, I can't add anything to what you guys already said about they didn't identify the guy. It doesn't even look like him. I agree with all that. But at the same time, I gotta make an effort to try to defend the guys who actually made the shot, because you have to look at it from where they're sitting. They're being briefed about a terrorist attack that had been happening on January 7th, and then again just a few days ago with the second cell, and the guy got away.
That'd be July 7, not January 7.
Right. So they're still at large. When they got the alert that one of them has been spotted, well, they're not the ones making they're relying on what they're being told from the surveilling cops and from the command center. So they go down there. Well, I'm not gonna summarize it. You guys saw it. I don't need to summarize it. But
yeah.
I just can't help but put myself in their shoes and say I'm not sure I would have done anything differently. And I gotta and after the hit, we're not talking about after the hit. We're talking about the scene.
Yeah.
The part about the radios breaking down, they couldn't communicate underground. All this stuff is like a perfect storm of something really bad's going to go down, and you knew it was coming. And when I actually saw how it went down, I'm looking at the title of this thing, and it's like the shooting of Jean Charles de Menezes. It's the execution of Jean Charles de Menezes. And that's
well,
okay, go ahead.
I'm going to elaborate on a couple of things. So first of all, 11 shots were fired over a 30-second period at 3-second intervals. But it was 11 shots, 7 of which were into his head. So there's there's a source, and I'll say a bona fide source, later said that members of SO19, which were the unit involved, received training from the SAS, and he said the operation was not typical of the police and bore the hallmarks of a special forces operation. It has to be said that certainly reflects my knowledge of special forces. Hollow point bullets being employed is unusual but not unheard of.
The thing is, sorry, back to the SAS point. I think that so many different armed response units. We know we have knowledge of so many different armed response units having some form of training from the SAS. I mean, it's forms of training is different to total training. They are not trained as the SAS would be trained. So that's quite ambiguous. It could actually mean anything. Have been trained by the SAS. Trained by the SAS in what precisely?
I mean, they certainly behave like the SAS, that's for sure.
Yeah,
because when you send the SAS in, they're not renowned for taking prisoners. They'll shoot to kill.
But they are considerably more highly trained to identify, any X-rays or targets than anybody else. They know what they're doing. These I think were possibly undertrained wannabes in some respect because they have had that contact with the SAS. I'm casting aspersions slightly there, but I think we have to be quite careful as to how much training they may have received from the SAS because their training is intense.
That all may be true, but that may all be true, but that's not what I'm getting when I'm watching the scene. I have no idea what the depth of their training is. I'm just looking at these guys and saying, well, they're doing a job. They really believe that a guy's going to set a bomb off, and they have to get down there pronto. They're relying on these people telling them over the head that get the guy, and it turned they shot the wrong guy. And I can't help but feel for that. I'm not trying to diminish what happened to the suspect at all. Okay, and I want to say one more thing about this is, some people mentioned it like, well, they didn't identify themselves going in. Well, I thought the whole point was not to do that. It's like in the U.S. we have a no-knock warrant or no sirens approach because you don't want to spook the hijack. You don't want to spooch the hostage taker. Or in this case, you don't want to spook the suicide bomber. So they're not rushing in saying police, police, police because they don't want the guy to set the bomb off.
I want to move on. I want to talk about what happens after. We have a number of different aspects of what I'll politely describe as Operation Cover-Up. First of all, the police, including the members of the surveillance team, try to assert that Jean-Charles stands up and attempts to activate something in his pockets with his arms. All the 17 witnesses categorically state that while, yes, he did stand, he definitely didn't reach for anything. And he only stood when somebody pointed and said, "That's him." At which point he stood up, which is a pretty fucking normal reaction. If someone points at you and says that's him and you're sitting down, you would stand up. So they also put out the fake story to the press about him wearing baggy clothing and wearing a baggy jacket. When that was later found out to be untrue, the police did not correct the press on that, and they could have done. They could have corrected the press on that far, far earlier, and they didn't. And in fact, that's a common tactic of the police, that if they want the stain on someone's reputation to remain, they will not go out of their way or indeed make any effort to correct the press on anything that makes that person look in an unflattering light. So all of that stuff is true. It's well handled in the show. Then we have the conflict between the senior officers, in particular Brian Piddock, and the officer above him, of course, who's head of the Met. Those conflicts did take place, and in fact, at one point, Piddock actually threatened to sue the Metropolitan Police. I don't know the outcoming of that, but I mean, of course, you know, ultimately he had a very successful career. Especially as it was widely known by this time that he was a gay police officer, but had kept that sort of under wraps. That wasn't public knowledge to the press and things, but it was certainly well known within the constabulary. And and he would, you know, unfortunately, he would ultimately lose his job over this affair by standing up for what he believed in, which was that Blair knew 6 hours afterwards that this guy was not a terrorist. Yet they kept a lid on that, which I think was also a mistake. You could argue that was over concerns for public safety. I call bollocks on that. That's utter nonsense. If you know you've shot an innocent man, you have to say so. And I think one of the things I said when I talked about this show before was, we're in 2005 when these events take place. Social media is just starting to take off, not quite to the gargantuan levels that we have now, but you had MySpace, you had Facebook, things of that nature in their early stages. But we're not in the time of Hillsborough, where, you know, public inquiries take decades to happen. The Stockwell public inquiry happened quite quickly after this. And Cressida Dick rightly came under a lot of fire. She's incredibly well played by Emily Mortimer. I've, as much as a Londoner does, I've kind of taken an interest in her career over the years. And she has presided over a number of cock-ups, not least of which was the handling of the Sarah Everhard disappearance investigation, which subsequently turned out to be unfortunately a death, and probably an accidental death. And at one point, again, the police did the same thing. They because they were coming under criticism for the way they were handling that search operation, where the body had not been recovered. Nobody knew where this woman was. She'd just gone for a walk with her dog and she disappeared. You know, suddenly this information gets leaked to the press that, oh, you know, she had a counselor and she had a counselor and was talking to somebody about mental health issues. That's like 90% of the country. 90% of the country at some point have probably gone through, the population have probably gone through some kind of mental health issue. Yet suddenly that became a forefront of a press briefing, and you know that got leaked by the police. It couldn't have come from anywhere else. So that again is another example of leaking one piece of information to take the heat off. They do this all the time. So I thought the episodes 3 and 4 handled this stuff particularly well. If anything, I think I mean, maybe we'll talk about criticisms about the show in a sec after this, but my thoughts on the internal stuff with the police, particularly the actors, we've talked about them already, so we won't repeat that. But all of the dialogue there, you're juggling quite a lot of events here because you're covering the public inquiry as well, which happened sometime later. That was massive. Loads of stuff came out in that. All the cock-ups all came out in that public inquiry. You know, they weren't public knowledge before then, like the guy taking a leak and stuff like that. That all came out as a result of the public inquiry. No problem, Paul. I just can't put that comment up because you've used the R word in there, so I just can't put it up. Yeah. So just sort of before we get on to any criticisms of the show you may have, so don't voice those now. Any comment anyone wants to make about any other aspects of the show in particular, and then we'll move on to criticisms, and then we'll head towards a wrap up. So Rachel, anything else you want to mention?
One thing that struck me is how perfectly balanced it all was. There was not a moment where you're like, oh, this is dragging on. These scenes are dragging on and you need to hurry up and get into the next thing. No. Because that's the danger of dealing with multiple points of view surrounding one incident. You can easily have a problem with you're hanging too long on this person. You're focusing too much on this. There was none of that. And they didn't shy away from showing any of the mistakes. And that's why I'm still kind of stunned that it's a Disney production. I would have thought they would have at least glossed over a few things.
I mean, it's interesting that you use the word balance, because I mentioned that earlier. And one of the scenes where I thought, I'm watching a good show here, was when we had the scene in the public inquiry and the two firearms officers are giving evidence. And the two firearms officers did say those phrases word for word. Can I take time to acknowledge the families who are present and say how sorry I am for what happened? And they were, I think they were probably the only two people from the Met that probably offered anything in the way of an actual heartfelt apology. And of course, the show didn't need to include that because that's portraying them sympathetically. But they did say it, and they made a real point of saying it at the public inquiry before they gave their evidence. And I thought it was good that they included that. So again, that's balance. Forgive me for rattling on. Did you want to say anything else?
Well, again, it's just even the scenes that take place in Brazil, those were really well done. And so a couple of the best scenes in the show, like when the mother finds out that she has lost her son. That's one of the best scenes in the entire thing. Just the simple grief.
She's at like a dinner party or something. I forget where they are, but they're either at a wedding or a dinner party or something. When the news filters back to them, they're at some kind of social event.
Yeah.
When she finds out. Yeah, it's horrible. Okay, thanks, Rachel. Inside Man.
Mm-hmm.
Just any other areas you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, aside from, excuse me, aside from the public inquiry, obviously we know, we have verbatim records of everything that was stated there. I mean, obviously, dialogue is speculative dialogue. Some of the interaction, we know of certain conflicts between certain characters, but that dialogue is speculative dialogue. However, we do actually get, regardless of whether it's speculative dialogue or not, because obviously there was nobody there that was sitting there taking minutes on every piece of interaction that went on between each of the officers and everything sort of throughout, but the dialogue is it's really boiled down to its absolute essence. It's not like it's wasted in any way, shape or form. It's completely driving the story towards a point, and it's not framed in a way where there is anything. I think a few people on the panel have actually mentioned this, particularly Northern, that you don't feel that it's framed in a way where there is a specific agenda where it's driving you to reach your own personal conclusion, because the events themselves, the true events, will drive you to reach that conclusion because we know what the events are.
They let the events speak for themselves, I think is effectively what you're saying.
And it's I think Yeah, there's so much more that I could. I think we could probably do a 4-hour stream on this, to be fair, because there's so much in it. But I'll keep it quite brief. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on. Northern.
I do apologise, but what was the question again?
Well, just I know you're sleepy. Sorry. Just we've covered acting. We've covered the handling of the the execution. We're just talking about the handling of the other scenes, all the way the other information is handled and distilled in the drama. Did you have any other comments or anything you wanted to highlight that you thought was particularly good that you haven't mentioned already? We're going to do criticisms next, so.
Yeah, I do have a couple, but we'll get on to that. It is really well handled. I mean, it was good to really see a drama that was doing something that didn't feel like it was. I've said this before. It didn't feel like it was trying to, twist it to some kind of bias. No, it looked like it was trying to portray a really tragic event in the most neutral way possible, while also calling out the pure incompetence of how it was handled. Because we're seeing this kind of incompetence handled still to this day in just other situations.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting that Sarah Everhard has been mentioned, which happened in 2021, and I mean, God, what an awful case.
The fact that she had a certain prime minister in her corner throughout her whole career doesn't really surprise me.
You're talking about Cressida Dick.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Cressida Dick, I believe, was still presiding over the Met when Sarah Everhard was kidnapped, raped, and murdered by a Met police officer, serving Met police officer. And I remember another friend of mine who was working in the Met at the time, and he said it was so bizarre that this guy was he'd worked for the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, and then resigned from Kent Police, and then took up the role of a firearms officer, and was then transferred to the Met. Really weird series of events to happen before then being assigned to parliamentary and diplomatic protection, especially when he had a known history of sexual offences. Just beggars belief, doesn't it? I mean, are the police that desperate? I don't know. Sorry, it's slightly disconnected from this case, but it did happen under Cressida Dick's watch. So,
so it looks like they have very strict background checks, like schools, I'm guessing, for teachers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they let people fill out the forms themselves or something. Toxic, do you want to get into anything else? I mean, also just obviously you've got a background of working for military and police authorities. Yeah. How do you feel all the internal minutiae and all that stuff was handled?
It was pretty accurate. I mean, again, some of the stuff is a little, excuse the, pedantic nature of my, it was a little foreign to me because there's no such thing as firearms officers and non-firearms officers here in the States and or in the military. But I mean, I kind of understand the concept of what it was they were doing, but the whole multiple briefings, where the cops are kind of like, oh, here we go again. We're about to get the same briefing we've already gotten, which, kills their prep time and then ramps them up. The stuff in the surveillance van with the guy that, has to pee in a bottle. I mean, that's all very, very realistic. And in this case, very unfortunate.
Many YouTubers would be familiar with that practice as well, I believe.
Facts. And, the situation in which, they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants in one area, but they're being too adhesive to certain protocol. Like the one constable is telling them, what if it's biological or chemical, where the other bomb tech is like, look, I need to get in there and process the scene. The sense of urgency of working the scene, because the more time goes by, the less chance they have to catch them, and then the wanting to be super duper careful because they're dealing with potentially biological or chemical weapons. That's very realistic. And it can be extremely frustrating. And I'm not saying any of that to excuse the officers' poor tradecraft in this. I'm just saying it's just a reality that does happen, and I appreciated the fact that was in there. And then of course the multi-layered supervisory control, where they have the commander, the commissioner, and the captain, I guess. Whereas you should really just kind of have one strong voice instead of these political machinations going on and stuff. I would have had the young guy running the thing, because he seemed to have the coolest head about him in the whole situation. So I really don't.
Yeah, if only that had been the case, but sadly not.
And then of course the sad reality of when something goes bad, the pointing of the fingers. It's the old. I don't want to be the only one left standing when the music stops without a chair. And that's unfortunately what's going to happen, or the opposite happens, which is what happened here, which is nobody got caught without a chair when the music stops, and that's also unfortunate.
This is Alex Jennings on screen now, who I believe in the public inquiry scenes is portraying Michael Mansfield QC.
Yeah. He's one of my favorite actors. Actually, I absolutely adore Alex Jennings.
Michael Mansfield QC is also, if you get to watch him in court, which I have many times, he's also a delightful actor in court. And
as you need to be.
No, yeah, I mean, he's top of his game, and I saw him give evidence or question witnesses, rather, at the Marchioness inquiry. And then also he was involved in another one that I worked on, and he came to see the production of the Marchioness inquiry, my play. So I've had the real Michael Mansfield come and see my work. But he's been played by about 5 different actors over the years, because of course he also handled the Stephen Lawrence case, and that production was also produced by Jeff Pope. So there you go. Small world. Thanks for that, Toxic. Darth, do you want to add anything else? Not criticisms.
I just wanted to echo what Inside Man said, that we could be here 4 hours talking about this. So, especially the cover-up part. Now, the cover-up part it was really just everybody was CIA. Everybody wants to doesn't want to get in trouble. Look at the hardest thing to do is to be humble, is to say I'm sorry or I made an error. It's our human nature to avoid guilt, to avoid getting in trouble. It's part of surviving. And it takes humility to bend the knee. It takes humility to like those 2 officers towards the end. It took humility for them to say, "Yeah, I'm sorry for what happened," and I'm glad they did. Okay, if anybody in the UK is wondering, anybody watching right now, especially if you worked on this project, if you're wondering if people overseas are aware of this event, well, we are now. So you did a good thing.
Well said.
Okay.
Well said.
Good stuff. So let's talk about any criticisms we might have of the show. I mean, I would have been quite happy if this was 6 episodes. It is a little truncated. We could have had a whole episode about the public inquiry. There's a lot of stuff that isn't covered, which I'm sure the executives sitting around a table would have made boring television. Not so. You could have done a whole episode on the public inquiry and it would have been really gripping, because so much stuff came out in that. And I would have liked to have had a much longer scene with Cressida Dick under pressure, with the lawyers thundering away at her. I think we got a couple of minutes, but I would have liked to have seen some longer stuff there. these are minor criticisms because I accept that, you know, this was made on, probably commissioned on the basis that it's going to be 4 episodes, and, you know, you've got limited time to cram in a lot of stuff. I'm glad that the family got a fair bit of screen time, particularly in the sort of latter half of the show. If they hadn't have been included, or their screen time had been less, that would have been a major criticism from me. But fortunately, I was getting, when I was writing my review and I was watching the last episode, I was thinking, oh, you know, are we gonna see the family's reaction a little bit more? Fortunately, I felt what there was sufficient. Maybe could have had a bit more, but so yeah, I think I think, you know, maybe I feel there's some scenes that are missing. There probably was stuff that was shot that was left out, but I'm hard pushed to come down with a real heavy. I haven't got any heavy criticisms of the show. I would have liked it to have been longer, and I would have liked to have seen more. And if that's the biggest criticism I have, I think it's a reflection of a good show, me wanting more. So yeah, Rachel.
I feel the exact same way.
Okay.
I could have watched 8 episodes of this and not felt like I wasted my time. There was so much to go into.
I think that's a big compliment to the filmmakers and the writer. So yeah, okay. Inside Man.
I have to echo those sentiments precisely. It's the only criticism that I have. It's the only one. I would have liked to have seen more. The only real criticism, genuine criticism that I have is of the real events, you know, and it's more than just a criticism, you know, of particularly of Cressida Dick. And I think you know my feelings on Cressida Dick, Lance. You know exactly what I think of her. And I shan't say too much more about Dick. Just that she is one.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of the show, I it's hard to say that you love a show like this. You have to. It's a show that you have to watch. There are very few these days. Very few shows that are an absolute must watch, and this really is one I think people must watch, particularly in the UK. You know, because of, you know, we are very familiar with this, and we live with these people all the time. You know, we rely on them to keep us safe, and we don't want to see this happen to any more of our number ever again.
No, indeed. Northern, any criticisms of the show?
Yeah, I think on episode 2, when for some reason on Disney Plus there's no subtitles on episode 2, so when you get the scenes where Charles is talking with his friend, you don't know what they're talking about. I even went on the settings to turn on the subtitles. It said no subtitles available. I'm like, what?
That's bizarre, because I had them.
No, I had the same issue. I was wondering if it was just me and I had messed up the settings some kind of way.
Did anybody?
Really?
Well, I had them. Yeah. So we had them.
I had
in
subtitles.
The UK.
Yeah, I had.
Yeah.
I had subs. Yeah.
Yeah. My second criticism, and this time the last one's not really the fault of the filmmakers. I blame Disney Plus for that, but the second one probably is when they did get to the execution scene. I think it should have just cut to black and we heard the shots. Like, we don't not see bits of his brains fly on the window, because we do see a little bit. And I thought, okay, I don't mind a little bit of occasionally, but I thought this is a very real event of something that happened to a real person. Cut to black, let's just hear the shots. Cut to the next episode, we see the aftermath. It's a nitpick, but that's it.
The show, by the way, the parents of Jean-Charles were consultants on the show, and I believe they were quite heavily involved. So I'm going to guess, and it is just a guess, that there was probably a conversation around how much should we show, and I am guessing the parents said you should show everything.
Yeah.
I'll give him credit though.
I'm guessing that came from the relatives, because there was, I think there's a brother and sister and stuff, and anyway, yeah. Okay,
it's just my criticism. It's not really a reflection on.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's absolutely fine. Toxic.
Yeah, I'd probably guess that was due to the fact they wanted us to kind of feel what we should be feeling. That it had to be that kind of brutality and stuff like that. But I mean, if that's your nitpick, that's your nitpick. I would probably just, very small nitpick was just the tete-a-tete between the junior captain and Lord Varys, where they kept, they kind of like, they did it like more than once. They did it like multiple times where it was just, the junior officer saying, we've got to be more transparent. We've got to do this. We got to do that. And then, the commissioner just, kind of giving him platitudes and, veiled threats and, just kind of shining him on, so to speak. There was just like
that did happen more than once.
I'm sure it did.
True reflection.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why I say it's a nitpick more than anything else, because it had a lot of verisimilitude. Like it was very real. I don't doubt that it happened, but it does slightly slow down the narrative when we're wanting to get to. But that's it. Like that's like tiny. Maybe I might also say I would have liked more. They go. I mean, I know the story is about the guy that was Jean mistakenly being murdered, but at the same time, I still would have liked the narrative with the four bombers kind of gets lost with that. So I wouldn't have minded like a dual story.
Yeah, I mean, as we several of us have said, we would have quite happily watched 6 or 8, even 8 episodes of this, and you could have had
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what I got, and so it's good.
Before I ask Darth if he has any criticisms, what is going on with this guy's eyes to the left of the police commissioner here? He looks like a serial killer security guard.
He just happened to catch us
in this picture. What's happening?
Yeah. Happened to catch a still where the guy just happened to blink, Lance. I mean, people do blink.
Well, he's that is an intense stare. That's all I'm going to say. Doesn't like that reporter. I think that reporter's asked the wrong question. He's like, "You asked that question again. I'm reaching for my gun." That's what that look says to me. Okay, Darth, any critique? Is there anything about the show you didn't like?
Possibly. Let me put it in the form of a question. Did you think that maybe they showed a little bit too much of the terrorist perspective?
No, I actually was quite pleased that we got that, because, as I said, part of their defense was we were not serious. These bombs were not designed to go off. We were just we just wanted to do something because we disagreed with the war in the Middle East, blah blah, bombing of wherever. And
I didn't.
But that was a big narrative that was pushed at the time. That's why these bombs didn't go off, because they were not serious.
Yes, I got it. I'm not saying they should have cut out altogether. I'm saying I thought they went to it a bit too much. They could have cut back on a little bit. Like, for example, the guy sitting there and doing the recording of him talking to his family and his son. I couldn't care what that guy had to say to his son about him blowing himself up. I don't care about that.
I mean, I think if you don't show the motivation, whether you agree with it or not, whether you care about it or not, you run the risk of dehumanizing them to the point that they become sort of cardboard cutouts. They just become that. They become,
Well, if they're
figure terrorists.
If they're applying their ingenuity to slaughtering human beings like this, then that speaks volumes about their own dehumanizing themselves.
Yeah.
I mean,
fair point. Yeah.
I mean, it is a fair point, but I think one of the things I've credited the show for is balance. I'm glad that they got the screen time that they were given, because I don't think that screen time creates any sympathy for them whatsoever. Yes, you can. No, it doesn't. I mean, you can see that they were misguided. I think it was good that they showed that one of them actually bottled it and decided he didn't want to do it. You could see his heart wasn't in it in earlier scenes.
Sure,
I thought the actor played that really well.
Sure,
and
I could see that.
Actually, until I watched this show, I didn't realise there was a fifth member who'd bottled it and hadn't gone through with it. You know, and of course
and they surrendered in the end. They didn't martyr themselves. They said, "Oh, screw it, I'm just going to surrender."
Yeah, I mean, he obviously tried to pass off himself. I'm not sympathising with him, but imagine if those 4 bombs had gone off and killed loads of people. At least he did do the right thing in that context. You know, he had a crisis of conscience. I don't know what his prison term was actually. I mean, I don't think I know they all went down for a long time. I don't think he should have gone down for as long as the others, because if you're not rewarding people for saying, no, actually, I'm not going to go through with this, I'm going to do the right thing and leave the bomb in the park and fuck off and tell people where it is with an anonymous phone call. Well, you know, I don't think they overplayed the screen time with them, but I think it was good that we got to see what we got to see. Understanding your enemy is key to defeating them. So I do want to know what motivates these people, whether their motivations are right or wrong. I still want to know what motivates them. It's like the wife, you know, I thought it was good that we had the scene with the wife, that she was all for him. She was completely, you know, in favor of what he was doing. And then, of course, you know, as soon as the police come knocking, she's like, I don't like it.
Yeah, I was going to close with that, but you can have it.
Well, it was great that we got to see that, because at the end of the day, you know, if you were really staunchly of your convictions, you would stand by him and say, good, I'm glad he did what he did. But of course, she became a coward, and a lot of them are ultimately. I mean, it's, you know, so well played by the actress as well. I thought she did a good job.
Fair enough. That's a fair rejoinder. Fair enough. The only complaint I guess I really have would be, I would have liked to have seen more of the aftermath from the perspective of the tactical team that did the shooting themselves, where the impact it has on them, their realization that, hey, you told us to shoot this guy and we did, and now you're not going to cover for us.
I think I would have liked a couple more.
I never authorized Kratos. Well, I would like to see a little more of that.
Did they actually confront her in real life though about her throwing them on the?
Well, in the public inquiry, that loads of people testified against her version. So you know,
I would have liked to have seen that.
There wasn't, I would have liked to have seen that as well. There wasn't a uniform story among the police, that's for sure, because all the different conflicts all came out later. So
it's just not really a criticism, but it's more like what I would have liked to have seen. That's all I got.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're coming up to the end, so I'm going to ask. There's 12, 14 people watching. If you've seen the show, in the chat, please give us a rating out of 10. If you haven't seen the show, that's fine. We highly recommend that you watch it. I'm not going to give the show 10 out of 10. I do think it's an extremely well produced quality drama. It's exactly the sort of stuff I want to see. When I saw Disney were doing it, I was like, oh, well, I don't know about that. I have to say, I take my hat off to them. Can't see me. I'm not on camera, but I am literally taking my hat off. I think they did a really good job. This, as Inside Man said, in the wrong hands, this could have been really quite. It could have been a sort of a puff piece, handled quite poorly. I think they handled it quite sensitively. I like the fact that the Brazilian narrative is quite prevalent in the show. Great performances, good direction, great staging. I mean, you know, the production design, it's all shot on location, basically. real tube station was used. This is an extremely well-made show. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of it. I think some of it was rushed. It would have been great to have seen more impact on the SO19 team, and especially in the immediate aftermath, and the stuff that went on there. I think there was opportunity for more conflict to be seen there, but we got a sense of it. So I think for me it probably lands. Some episodes I would definitely rate 9 out of 10. Others I would rate 8. So I'd probably give it an 8.5 out of 10 overall. Definitely a must-watch, high recommendation. Rachel.
Oh, I would have to give it a 9, a solid 9. Sure, there are things they could have expanded on more, but what we were given was so well done. Like, I only know about the other elements that they didn't get to cover because I did the thing you should do after watching this, and that's look into it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should look at everything. Look at all the evidence that they completely ignored. They ignored all the evidence and made this decision. And they have to live with it. And I don't think they left that out. They showed that they were actually struggling with what they did as well. The only one that didn't, as we know, is Cressida.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Cressida Dick. Yeah. Okay. On that word, Inside Man, that's your cue.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to give it a 10. And the reason for me giving it a 10 is whenever I watch anything, I always score things on how much something has emotionally affected me, and this did affect me emotionally. This really gave me sort of all the colors of the rainbow in terms of emotions. And I still feel angry about it right now. I mean, just thinking about it and talking about it, it is difficult to kind of shed that once you've watched it, but I'm glad it did. I'm glad it's done that, because we need to have our thoughts provoked, and that's the purpose. That's precisely what these things are meant to do. Any of these true life dramas, they're precisely meant to do that. So so an absolute golden 10 from me.
High praise indeed. Northern.
Yeah, I can't see any faults with this. I probably will give it a 9.5, but just for a little nitpick I had, but that's about it. I really do give this one of the highest praises. I think it's one of the best things to come out this year.
Yeah.
So you're glad I made you watch it then?
Yes, I know. We usually disagree on a lot when you recommend, but yeah, I'm glad to have something recommended to me by you that I actually really liked.
First of all, I'm not sure that is true.
He's a cheeky bugger.
And I'm not saying that there's a couple of people that should have watched it yesterday on this panel that didn't, but there might be a couple of people on this panel that should have watched it yesterday but didn't. Okay,
Jeez.
Thank you for that. 9.5, a very respectable score from Beyond the Wall. Toxic.
I'll also give it a 9. A couple nitpicks aside, and that's about it. I've already mentioned them, and I don't even think they're even worthy of mentioning. The only reason I did is because you asked me for a nitpick. So there's that.
No. You could have said I had none, but
I didn't want to be dishonest, but I'm glad I watched it. I'm sorry that I watched the other suspect British thing.
Yeah, how was the other suspect show? What did that score out of 10, by the way?
That will be a discussion for another day. I don't want to take away from this.
So for anyone watching, Toxic went and watched a different show called Suspect.
To be fair, also another British crime thing, and ever since Lance called my house at 8:00 at night, my girlfriend has been enticed to watch nothing but British crime thrillers on Netflix, And
what can I
Slippery
say?
slope.
It's the effect I have on women when I call at 8 o'clock in the evening.
So when I was given the instructions to watch this, of course, what I, as a dutiful boyfriend, I said, so Lance says we have to watch Suspect. And she said, okay, I'll find it and put it in the queue. And then she put it on. She's like, wow, this is a lot of episodes. I said, well, let's get through as many as we can. And then, I'll be ready for.
I did specifically say it was 4 episodes long and it was on Disney. So maybe the clue was there's tons more episodes.
So I can either argue with you or I can argue with her. So which do you think is the more
don't argue with me because you're wrong and it's my channel.
Okay.
Argue with her might lead to some very angry makeup sex. Who knows?
Yikes.
So, indeed, Dan Candy rates it 9.0984562145.
Jenny, don't lose that number.
I believe that's a pretty significant rating. Excellent stuff. All right. Well, the general consensus from the panel is this is a first-class show. Couldn't agree more.
We need to hear from Darth.
Darth. Sorry. Yes, Darth. Your rating out of 10. I'm sorry.
If your goal was to raise awareness of this event to people in the outside world, at the same time as telling justice within the UK about what happened with this case, I have to say that I can't give it a rating other than 10. Because you absolutely 100% achieved what you set out to do.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the panel, I'm sure everyone would agree, even though it might seem odd coming from a group of strangers on a YouTube channel, we would like to offer our sincere and heartfelt condolences to the family of Jean-Charles. It's awful that you had to go through this. It's terrible that you sent your son, your brother, to our country, who came here intending to be an honourable citizen, to work, to enjoy the delights our country has to offer as a tourist, and through absolutely no fault of his own whatsoever, unfortunately had his life taken under horrific circumstances, and that's just a legacy that no one wants. And I as a British citizen, I feel shame that your family went through that, and we can only offer our condolences and sympathy, and they do come from a genuine place. I don't know if the words glad or pleased really feel appropriate, but I think it's important that shows like this are made, and I'm glad the family gave their consent and they were involved and they were consulted, which they absolutely should have been with a show of this nature. And I'm glad that the results have spoken for themselves, and there are things in the show, and I'm very, very educated on this topic, having watched plays, and I've also seen a lot of the public inquiry. There were things that the program taught me about it that I didn't know before, and perhaps most important of all, I now feel like I got to know Jean-Charles a little bit, and I certainly won't forget him in a hurry, and I sincerely hope that this never happens to anybody again. We do live in very difficult times. The police do have an extremely difficult job, especially the rank and file officers, who are not always properly supported as they should be. But we can just pray that something like this doesn't happen again, because I would hate to see another family ever go through this.
Unfortunately, not enough of that shit rolls back uphill, which is a great shame.
Indeed. So thank you everyone for taking part in this special episode of the Nielsen Ratings. Now, the Nielsen Ratings is normally on Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock, where we talk about new shows, new releases, both the new stuff on Netflix, the new stuff on Amazon, the new stuff on Disney. And then occasionally we let the inside man out of his cage and allow him to talk about an Italian cop show from the 1970s. So there's a mixture of topics. We do talk about some older stuff as well. Today we are just talking about this. It's a special show because I believed the show would warrant this kind of time, and I'm glad we've given it the time that it deserves. So there is no Nielsen ratings show next Tuesday. There's a week of no stuff on the Outcast Creative channel, at least no live streams. But we'll be back the week after at the usual slot of 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. Also, if you didn't catch my interview with the incredible actor whose biography just arrived actually today, annoyingly arrived. I interviewed him yesterday, and his biography arrived this afternoon. Jim Piddock, who's been in films like Independence Day, Best in Show, he's been in Blacklist and a whole load of other things. His biography arrived today, caught with my pants down. I've already started reading it. It's absolutely hilarious. I can highly recommend the book. I can tell it's going to be a lot of fun. Do check out the interview I did with him yesterday. That's under the industry interviews playlist. There are 113 of them. I've got more of those lined up towards the end of the month and plenty lined up for June and July. Do check out the channels of my colleagues on here that have taken part. Northern Bastard, Lord Toxic, all have their own channels. Rachel Percy Art also has, she is an artist, has artwork that's available for sale. There is also an interview with Rachel on the channel, so do check that out as well. And you can also hear Darth's unique air conditioning unit on our Shogun streams and various other things that he's taken part in. I think this is an applause of approval from Rodrigo Tenavoy. If I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Thank you very much for watching. Do appreciate that. So that's it from us. If you're new to the channel, do please like and subscribe. We focus on plugging stuff that we think you are going to want to see. We review and discuss stuff with people in the creative industries. We interview and support creatives right across the board: film, theatre, television, board games, design, writing, novels, and everything in between. So if you're an independent creative, you've got a project that you think is something I might be interested in, get in touch with me either through Twitter, Lance Nielsen WD, or you can contact me through the Outcast Creative Facebook page. I'm also a freelance writer and also a writing coach and an acting coach. So all of those services are available to you for a very reasonable price. Just inquire and I'll see what I can do to help you. In the meantime, that's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Misfits and dreamers getting innovative. It's film, TV, and theater in the mix. Industry interviews where ideas get their fix. He's creative, we're creative. How about you? Share your passion, join the crew. At Outcast Creative, we're breaking through. Hang with Lance and the Outcast crew. Hang with Lance and the Outcast crew. Interviews with fellow artists on the rise and reviews that might surprise. Films, TV shows from back in the day. You might just find a hidden gem today. He's creative, we're creative. How about you? Share your passion, join the crew. At Outcast Creative, we're breaking through. Hang with Lance and the Outcast crew. Hang with Lance and the Outcast crew. Filmmakers, comic book creators, stand up proud. Actors, musicians, board game designers, be loud. At Outcast Creative, amazing's the word. He even interviewed the legend, Galen Hurd. He's creative, we're creative. How about you? Share your passion, join the legend.